In this video, I'm going to show you how to place the rear wheel hub and bearing assembly on this Fiat 500. Located behind your rear brakes, let's get started. We'll have to remove the wheel to get to some of the hardware, so let's take off the hubcap first if your vehicle has it. You're going to want to use a pry bar and gently pry around the edge. It's got a bunch of clips that lock it onto the wheel. Don't pry with too much force, you don't want to break it, but just kind of walk the pry bar around and push it. There we go. Use a 17mm socket and remove the 4 lug bolts that hold the wheel onto the hub. Remove the wheel. With a 13mm socket from the back of the caliper, remove the 2 bolts that hold it onto the caliper bracket. It's easier to do it this way than to remove the whole assembly. Slide this off and just flip it backwards so you can set it out of your way. With a 13mm wrench, it's basically the only thing that's going to get in here, you're going to want to remove the 2 caliper bracket to knuckle bolts. With this one still in, let's remove the top one. That way the caliper is still mounted and being held in position. Once you break them free, it's easier to just use an open-ended wrench. Remove the bolts the rest of the way. There's one. Take the caliper bracket with the pads right out and set it aside. Use a 12mm socket to remove these bolts that hold the rotor, but they also serve as your guide pins for when you put the wheel on. Take the rotor off, set it aside. With a little pry bar and a hammer, we're going to have to pop this cap off. This is what hides your spindle nut, and we're going to have to remove that to pull the bearing out. Now use a 32mm socket, break free the spindle nut, and remove it. Take that off. There's also a washer back here that we'll have to remove, but it might also just pop right off when you push this away. I'm going to have to save that washer. There it is, and there's your wheel bearing. With a clean rag, wipe the spindle off and make sure that there's no debris left behind. That way the new wheel bearing has a nice clean place to seal on. I can see that because some of the grease and oils leaked out of the old wheel bearing, there's a bunch of junk that's caked onto the back here. So I'm going to take a wire brush and gently clean it off. And I say gently because you want to pay attention to the ABS sensor. Don't hit that with a hammer or a brush or anything. You want to make sure that that stays nice and safe. I'm going to use some brake parts cleaner to rinse all this off. On the back of the wheel hub bearing assembly, you'll see this magnet here. This is the tone ring for the ABS sensor. So of course, make sure there's nothing wrong over here. And you don't need to put anything on the inner races of the bearing or on the spindle. This just goes on dry. Take your new wheel hub and bearing, and you're gonna have to very gently walk it onto the spindle, put minimal pressure on it, and wiggle it back and forth until it finds the sweet spot that it needs to slide all the way in. This is a very, very snug fit. And there you have it. If it starts to bind up, that's probably because it's at a very slight angle, so shallow that you can't even tell, but like I said, it's a very tight fit, so wiggle it back and forth while gently pressing it on. Let's put this washer on, and then the spindle nut. Snug it up. The torque on this nut is 207 foot-pounds. This is a locking nut, so no need to do anything at this point once it's torqued. Let's put this center cap back in. Tap it with a rubber mallet gently. There we go, that's seated all the way. Apply a little bit of anti-seize on the surface of the hub. Try to avoid getting it on the threads of the lug bolts, but do get it on the threads of these little bolts that hold the rotor on. It'll prevent them from seizing up. And keep it a nice thin layer so that when you put the rotor on, it doesn't squish out and get sprayed everywhere as you drive down the road. On the back side of the rotor, because mine is new, I don't have to worry about it, but if yours is old, you're going to want to clean up the rust or debris that's formed around here so that when you put it on the hub, it sits flat. Slide it on. Try to line it up with the lug bolts, of course, but also with these two securing points, and have these bolts ready to slide them in. Snug these up. Take the caliper bracket, line it up with the knuckle, and let's put the two bolts in that secure it. And snug these up. The torque on both of these is 42 foot-pounds. However, you won't be able to get a socket in here. If you have a crow's foot wrench, you can put that on your torque wrench and torque it that way. I do not. So I'm just going to put a wrench on here. 42 foot-pounds is not that much. I can easily pull the wrench just a little extra, and that'll be plenty tight. All right, there's one and two. Just make sure they're about the same. Put the caliper back on the bracket and over the slider pins. Have your bolts ready to start them back on. Snug them up. Torque these two bolts to 25 foot-pounds. If your slider pin is spinning like that, you want to grab it with some pliers or a wrench. Let's put the wheel back on, line it up with the two alignment pins, press it onto the hub, start on all four lug bolts, snug them up in a cross pattern, and also in a cross pattern, torque them to 75 foot-pounds if you have aluminum wheels, or if you have steel wheels, it's going to be 63 foot-pounds. Because I have steel wheels, I'm torquing this to 63 foot-pounds. Once again, if you have aluminum wheels, 75 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Double check them. If your vehicle had these hubcaps, you want to make sure that when you put them on, you line them up with the valve stem. Otherwise, it's going to get crushed and not even seat fully when you put it on. So, line it up, tap it, and that should get it fully seated. And there you have it. Job is done.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.